Take a look at the small numbers on the right-hand side of this chart. I can zoom in for you. They are between 2018 and present. That number has been hovering between 4% and 6%, right? Now, if you've been listening to left-wing news media like Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks, if you've been listening to campaign speeches and debates from Bernie Sanders, you will have the preconceived notion that this statistic you're looking at right now, the rate of wage growth in the United States, is at a crisis level. That it's so low, and that it's been so low for so long, that this is a unique crisis. This is a special problem the United States of America has, and that other countries don't have, or they don't have the same problem, right? And I've never once seen Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks, I've never once seen him make this argument or make this claim by presenting this number or presenting this chart and then comparing it to the charts from other countries. So you can see this in perspective, right? What is the average person supposed to think when they see this chart? Is 4% a good number? Is 6% a good number? Is this consistent with the dire warning Bernie Sanders is giving us again and again? The strange propaganda claim that the new radicalism of Bernie Sanders is justified because of a lack of wage growth in the United States of America. This is Canada. This is Canada by comparison. If you think that 5.5% wage growth is terrible, what do you think about the economy of Canada? Do you see the numbers on the right-hand side? Canada, you're lucky to be above 3%, right, in the last several years. You have long periods of time there where it's way, way below 3%, okay? And you're basically never above 4%. Oh, wow, now wage growth in the United States seems quite hopeful, seems quite powerful, seems quite strong. Now already we start to question, where did this idea come from that America's problem is wage growth? Here's Germany. All we ever hear about in the news is how Germany has this fantastically powerful, fantastically successful economy. And it does. All we hear about is how German car manufacturers are way more successful than American car manufacturers. And they are. We hear about how the German high-tech industry, from the pharmaceutical industry to the chemical industry, even they make many of the components that go into mobile phones. They make expensive microphones, all kinds of great equipment. Well, we hear nothing but good things about the German economy. We hear all the time that Germany is the powerhouse of the European Union economy. Look at the numbers on the right-hand side of the chart. Wage growth in Germany. You're lucky to reach 2%. Oh, now let's look back at the United States rate of wage growth. And you people have convinced yourselves, because you hear dishonest, carpet-bagging liars like Cenk Uygur and Bernie Sanders lying to you about this day after day after day, you've convinced yourself that America's unique problem, America's economic disadvantage in the world, is low wage growth. If you believe that, if you believe the United States is in a crisis right now because of lack of wage growth in the last 20 years, then what do you think about Germany? What do you think about Canada? Are they on the brink of a socialist revolution? Is the German economy just falling apart because of lack of wage growth when they're lucky to reach 2%? Japan. This is Japan. Look at the numbers on the right-hand side. Japan, one of the most vibrant economies in the world. One of the most impressive education systems in the world. Fabulous high-tech industry, fabulous exports, fabulous car industry, the whole gamut. Japan has one of the most successful economies. And you know the really messed up part? there's an argument, very few of you would be willing to hear it, and I think nobody in my audience would be willing to make it. There's an argument you could present that one of the strengths Japan has is that they've actually managed to have low wage growth, right? That they haven't had wages going up and up for all these years. That may be part of the reason why unemployment in Japan is practically zero all the time. They have such low unemployment, and they have such a vibrant economy. They have such great export-oriented industries, despite competing with China. They have to compete with China and Malaysia and Indonesia and Vietnam, and they're still doing great. And you know what? If you think the problem in the United States is lack of wage growth, why don't you look at Japan, where this number, it's lucky to be above zero. All right, over 2012 to present, Japan wage growth hovering around zero. Now I have to put in a footnote here. Japan does not measure wage growth by the same metric the United States does. Wage growth doesn't have a standardized measure the same way gross domestic product does. It's not like there's one simple mathematical formula and all these countries are doing it the same way. They're not. However, in broad brushstrokes, what I'm saying here is true, and claims made about wage growth that are now a major plank of left-wing propaganda used by Bernie Sanders and used by Cenk Uygur. I don't think those guys, I don't think they even think about what is the argument, like what's the basis for this and what are they driving towards. This has become a mainstay of propaganda, repeated day after day after day. And I hear people echoing it back to me, unquestioningly. And we can explode it. Just a quick Google search and look at some charts. Oh, Financial Times, U.S. wage growth stable at 3.1%. And if you've been paying attention, you know 3.1% is not a low number. Not for Canada, not for Germany, not for Japan. And in fact, the whole continent of Africa, this isn't one country, so weighted average for the whole continent of Africa, year 2000 to 2009. Does that look like a problem in terms of wage growth? Oh, the Middle East, 2000 to 2009. Does that look like a crisis? Does that look like it would cause political instability due to lack of wage growth? Now let's look again. Let's look again at that American and German chart for wage growth. Let's ask ourselves whether or not the rate of wage growth in the United States is really a problem, whether or not the rate of wage growth in Germany is a problem. Right? I have people sending me excuses for Bernie Sanders, and they're well-intentioned. They're people saying things like, well, Bernie Sanders isn't a researcher. I mean, Bernie Sanders can't be expected to really do research about these things. Bernie Sanders can't be expected to have a skeptical mind about things he found out about decades ago and that he's been repeating again and again. He can't be expected to question whether or not his own beliefs and conclusions and propaganda message is really true. Well, for one thing, you're putting your expectations of Bernie Sanders shockingly low. Okay, this is already one problem. But then the other question is, what's your excuse for Cenk Uygur, right? When I look at Cenk Uygur, I feel the exact opposite way about him as most of the people in my audience and most people in his audience. I think most people on the internet who watch this stuff, they really appreciate Cenk Uygur's contribution to journalism. They appreciate the entertainment and political commentary he provides, but they regard his political career as kind of a joke, as kind of a distraction. I feel the other way around about it. I think Cenk Uygur has an incredibly important message to deliver about corruption, what he calls money in politics. I think he has an incredibly important political platform, not just in standing for office and election now, but also he's created various foundations really targeting this issue, really trying to communicate to the public. All of your problems, left-wing and right-wing in the United States of America, are linked to the fundamental problem that you have cash and carry government, that people pay for influence, that the private sector can buy outcomes, can buy policy decisions, that you really fundamentally need to change much more in American politics, much more than just campaign finance reforms. You need to challenge the assumptions on which the whole system. I think that's a fundamentally brilliant, important, wholesome political message that Cenk Uygur, as a politician, he seems to be at the beginning of his career as a politician, not at the end. I support him on that 100%. Unfortunately, as a journalist, I think he has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. I think he's someone who comes on camera and has none of the self-discipline and none of the self-doubt and none of the skepticism and none of the intellectual rigor and none of the honesty necessary to do this job I'm basically doing for you right now for free. I'm getting paid like $5 a month at this point by Google, but I still have the honesty, I still have the rigor to just do this little bit of a Google search, to just question a piece of propaganda that I have heard repeated out of Cenk Uyghur's mouth again and again and again on an almost daily basis for years. Cenk Uyghur is the same guy who will come on camera and deadpan serious lie to you about the Central Park Five. And the most fundamental lie is that he'll pretend he knows what he's talking about when he never once read the police reports, he never once read the court decisions, he never once read the interviews and the confessions with the criminals. He never did the 15 minutes of research that I did on it. And you know what? At some point, we have to stop holding our political leaders to such abysmally low standards. It's not enough to say Bernie Sanders is better than Donald Trump. We have to move forward to saying either Bernie Sanders is right or he's wrong. Either Bernie Sanders knows what he's talking about or he does not. Either something is truth or fiction. And if you're dealing with fiction, you tell me. Are these lies well-intentioned? Or is there some other agenda here?